oh, whoops, we're out of time. We'll have to get to that piece next week. How many times have you finished a lesson like that? Or, oh, sugar, your mum's at the door. We need to go. Let's pack up your things quick. I'm not saying I haven't done it myself. I absolutely have. But I don't think it's the best way to finish off a lesson. Is it? We want to wrap up our lessons with a beautiful bow that makes our students feel accomplished or confident going home to work on things or just musical. So I've got some ideas for you for things you can do in those last few minutes of lessons to finish lessons off on a nice note. And I think it's really good to mix up what we do at the end of lessons so that students have a sense of novelty in their lessons as well. Before I get to the ideas, let me just say that if you have trouble keeping track of time, which I know many people do, I'm sort of a little bit obsessive about time, so I don't fall into this camp. But if you do, I have heard from many teachers that they find it really useful to set an alarm, like 3 minutes before the end of the lesson or whatever time frame suits you. If you have like a smartwatch, you could even have your smartwatch just buzz at that time so that you're not disturbing the lesson with like a big sound going off. It's not something a student would notice particularly, but it does alert you to nearing in on the end of each lesson. So the first idea I have for closing out your lesson is to improvise. I often do this at the start of lessons, but I think doing it at the end of a lesson could be a really great option too. Finishing with a little bit of improv. I do that sometimes. It finishes things on a really nice note. It's not about holding the students accountable or getting certain things done or practice techniques or anything so serious. It's just about experiencing some music, making some music together. That's it. That's all it is, which makes it everything, right? Next idea is to review your practice plans. So have your student tell you what and how they're going to practice this week. Great way to finish up a lesson, especially for students who are trying to accomplish really big things or students who definitely will practice but might not practice in the most productive way. It can be good to finish up with a quick review of what the practice plan is. And that could be when they're planning to practice, if they're struggling to fit it in at all, or it could be specifically like what we're working on. So prompting your students like, hey, okay, what did we do today that you're going to do at home this week? Or how are you going to practice X, Y, and Z this week? And then they can tell you in their own words, and you might see that they don't remember anything of the strategies that you did together. And while I love having a note system, we use Vivid Practice here, or maybe use a notebook or whatever it is. I love having that. Really should be a backup because a lot of students won't read it in detail. Unless they're a student who's more advanced and has much more ownership over their study, they're likely not going to use that as anything more than a quick reminder. So having them tell you, or you tell them and then them tell you it back to you, if that has to be the case, what they're going to practice and how they're going to practice it this week can be really beneficial in those last few minutes. We could also use those final few minutes to just play a favorite piece. Sometimes we get so hyperfixated on progress that we forget to stop and smell the roses, right? So maybe the last few minutes are just, oh, we finished such and such a piece today. You did a great job with that. Let's play it again to close out the lesson. I'd love to hear it again, right? Letting our students know that we actually enjoy listening to them play. They can bring pleasure to other people by just playing their favorite music that they love, that they can already play well because they've worked so hard on it. It's a great message to send to finish the lesson. And I think they are so much more likely then to go home and play that for a parent. And so often parents don't get to hear what's happening in lessons outside of like a concert situation. When they inquire about lessons, students will just say, oh, good, fun, or fine, or whatever, and not really expand on that because they don't know how to summarize it. But if they say they finish the lesson with that fresh on their mind, I've finished this piece today and I'm so proud of it, like they have that feeling, maybe they'll go home and play it for one of their family members or for a friend, and that's lovely. Another thing I want you to consider for the last few minutes of lessons is some cool down stretches. Yes, treating our lesson like an actual workout. It is not a super sweaty activity playing the piano, right? It's not a full-on workout, but stretching before can be very beneficial, and a lot of us might do that. My Irish dancing teacher would have told me that the stretch at the end is actually more important than the warm-up stretch. The cool-down stretch is very important. And I think that could be true for piano too. Not as much physically, but mentally, because that's part of what the cool down stretch in a workout is for. It's for sort of recalibrating and going back into non go, go, go mode, right? That's the technical term for it. Maybe we should use the last few minutes of our piano lessons to decompress in some way. And that could be getting up, stretching, doing some wiggles, right? And using those last few minutes to readjust to the regular world, the world outside of the studio. Or on a similar note, maybe we finish up with some breathing exercises. This is another thing I often do at the start of lessons, but not so much at the end. And it could be really useful, especially for students who maybe have perfectionist tendencies or are just hard on themselves. And so in lessons, there's a lot of pressure put on themselves, even if we're not putting it there, to get better and to do this and to do that. And so they're in this mindset of, I need to fix everything, and oh my gosh, this isn't good enough, that's not good enough. And we'll try and not let them get into that mindset during the lesson, but there's only so much we can control that. But maybe with those more anxiety-prone students or students who are a bit perfectionist, maybe we should finish the lesson by calming down our nervous system with some slow breathing. We have a resource in Vibrant Music Teaching that's called Preparation Meditations. They're audio tracks where I just talk through a very sort of simple breathing exercise or something like that. They're just like a minute long, they're very short. You could use those not as preparation, but as a cool down as well at the end of a lesson, and have your student leave your studio calm. Send them back to their parent in the most calm, lovely Zen state that their parent is going to appreciate so much as well. This video is brought to you by Vibrant Music Teaching. Struggling with lesson planning or student engagement? VibrantMusicTeaching.com has the solution. Discover a library of fun, effective teaching tools designed to make lessons exciting for you and your students. Connect with teachers worldwide and gain fresh ideas to keep your teaching inspired. Sign up now at VibrantMusicTeaching.com and bring new life to your lessons. Another thing we love to do that often might be at the end of lessons is a game. I actually don't finish on a game very often because I usually put it in the middle of lessons. But I know a lot of teachers would finish on a game. And I do think it's great because students walk out of their lesson feeling like piano's so much fun, right? And who of us doesn't want that? I definitely want that. I want my students to leave thinking, oh my gosh, I love coming here. It's the best. And a game is a great way to do that. Whatever the game is about and whatever style of game it is, as long as it's fun for your student and they're learning something musical, I think that could be a great way to finish out your lesson. How about singing as our last activity? Hear me out. I believe singing should be in every music lesson because it's our inbuilt instrument, and if we can get students singing, if we can get them using their voice, they will use their ears. And if we can't get students to use their ears properly, we have a really tough time teaching them to play beautiful music. Singing is such a valuable part of all my lessons. But how about we finish with it? Could we finish with some solfa singing or just singing a song? Like just a song? So one of their pieces, a song they're playing, anything? If we spent that last minute singing something together, singing as a group connects people in this unique way. And the act of singing releases serotonin and dopamine. So again, we're flooding their system with happy chemicals. Okay, I know you're screaming at me, but my students hate singing, so that's not true. You have to have a student who's already willing to sing, and that is about doing it regularly, all the time. And even with that, not every student is convincible. I'm aware of that. But most of my students are happy to sing because I start it with them young and we do it regularly. If that's the case, finishing with a singing activity could be very calming, refreshing, and have them leaving on a high note. How about we finish with a little chat? We could ask our student to tell us something that they achieved today, or tell us something that went great today, or whatever way you want to phrase that. Ask them to tell you something they did well, right as they're going out the door. So maybe some things went wrong, maybe there was a piece that they played better at home, they forgot their scale, they left their theory book at home, maybe it was a disaster, but they must have done something great. And if you couldn't have provided any opportunity for them to do something well in the lesson, I think we need to re-examine that, right? So there must be something they did well. And the more regularly we ask students to pick out these things, the more easily they will come to mind for them. So the first time, it might be tough for some students to come up with anything. And we'll have to do some guiding to get them to come up with something. But then maybe after that, or after a couple of times, they start finding it a little bit easier to come up with something. Maybe they just copy what you have been saying at first, like you're saying, oh, well, you played through this piece without stopping, and then they say the same thing next week because it happens to be true again. That's fine. But if we keep going with that, I think they'll be able to come up with something by themselves that they did great. And maybe this will carry through into the rest of their life, and they'll be able to give themselves a high five more often about the things they're doing really well. My final suggestion is one I haven't done. I'm going to be honest with you, but I want to do. And that is to put a dance break at the end of the lesson. I mentioned that our voice is like our first instrument. Singing is so vital to music study. But in my view, dancing is too. Not any formal kind of dancing, but just like moving to music. Because so much of music is designed for moving to. We understand it better if we can move to it. So maybe at the end of our lessons, we could put on our student's favorite song, or a piece they're learning, or just some random music, whatever you like, and move to it together. I had one of the teachers who works here tell me recently that they had a sort of shy student and they'd been reluctant to do any movement with them in lessons. They'd just kind of taken it off the cards for lesson planning without having tried it. And then they tried it and the student was totally into it. And I think that's often the case. I'm not pushing any students to do things they're not comfortable with, but if we don't give them those opportunities, we won't know. We can't assume that just because they're a teenager, they won't want to get up and do some silly dancing with us, right? Maybe we could finish by dancing it out. I hope I've given you some ideas. I'd love to hear how you like to end lessons when you are on time and on your game and don't just run out the clock and just have to scramble to fit everything in and say goodbye. But when you are intentional about it, what do you like to do as the last thing in a lesson? Let me know.